welcome back to KXAN Live. Happy Earth Day. Thanks for joining us here on KXAN Live. I'm your host, Esmeralda Zamora, and today we have our space-based segment, but this time we're not going to be talking about space, just a little bit here and there, but mostly about the ocean. And with me to do that is Mr. Eric Henriksen. Eric, happy Earth Day. How are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. It's a beautiful day for Earth Day. We have a lot of events happening here at KXAN. We're talking about Earth here. If you look at our First Morning Weather team, they're looking at a couple different Earth Day blogs on our website. Check those out. And then internally, we have Earth Day Bingo.
Yes, I just submitted mine this morning.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we had one of our graphic designers create a bingo card, and there's all these Earth Day activities we had to do, and then people were sending in photos. And there's some pretty good prizes that we're offering up that we're doing. So we have Earth Day Bingo here. You should do it in your office if you have time today. I had a couple emails last night at like midnight, by the way, because I'm on the committee and people who had submitted. So I'm happy.
So you're just looking through their bingo cards?
Yep. And look at all the photos. I'm like, okay, cool. Very easy. So yeah, excited about that. So it's a good Earth Day, but we're talking a little bit about the oceans, which is just part of our Earth, and then how NASA observes them. That's the space part, is NASA does observe our oceans. So that was me looping it all in.
Yeah, bringing it all together. So we're going to be talking about oceans, like you said, and there in your article it mentions that oceans are in crisis this Earth Day, and it has a little bit to do with our impact, right?
Right. So human-driven climate change. I usually try to avoid saying climate change whenever possible because sometimes people kind of zone out when I talk about it. We'll talk about extreme weather then, or extreme heating, because what's happening is human activity has caused the planet to alter, and it's caused it to change, and as a result, the temperatures in our oceans have risen and several degrees, and because of that rising temperatures, specifically, let's talk about our coral reefs, but marine biology across the entire ocean is being impacted, but in our coral reefs, they're seeing a real die-off. Here's some video of coral reefs, and some of that is bleached, and bleaching is because of chemical changes in our ocean due to that rise in temperature.
What do you mean by bleaching?
So bleaching, it's really cool to see up close because I think it's kind of hard to understand. We have a little bit in this video you can see, but basically those bright colors you think of when you see a coral reef turn bone colored.
Like white.
Like, look at that, that's bleached.
Oh, that does not look as pretty as they did in the other picture.
Right. I was in Hawaii over the last autumn. I was over the holidays, but it was like the Halloween holidays. Over Halloween, I was in Hawaii seeing some family there, and we got to go do some snorkeling. And all the reefs, the entire reef I was looking at, you could still see fish moving around, was bone white, and you could have like this like seaweed and dead plant life was just floating around. There were fish finding ways to survive and thrive, but the coral reef was, for all intents and purposes, dead.
Bleached.
Complete, for the most part, dead. There was some life there, but definitely like having some issues, and coral reefs play a key role in our environment, in our oceans. They supply homes and food for much marine biology, marine wildlife. And when these coral reefs are impacted as a result of our warming weather and our extreme weather that's having as a result of human-driven climate change, you start to see these coral reefs die off, and it creates a direct impact on the marine biology in our oceans, which actually impacts us here on land. So there's this full web, this food web that's occurring that has a direct impact on us in ways that you may not think about.
And Eric, when scientists say that this could be impact from from us pretty much, what do we do that makes these coral reefs bleached?
Do you drive a car?
I do.
So cars produce carbon dioxide. Monoxide will kill you. But carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas, and greenhouse gas emissions, what they do is they create basically we did an old cartoon on this if you ever watched First Morning Weather University, but it creates a blanket over the earth. And greenhouse gases create this blanket which traps warm air, but the more greenhouse gases we put out through the cars and other things, factories, cruises, planes, inter-travel is a big component of this. A lot of manufacturing it creates more and more of this gas, which creates more and more blankets. Cow farts, which I must say is actually one of the leading causes of climate change. They produce methane. The amount of cows we have in the country produce a lot of methane. Methane is a greenhouse gas. It creates more of this blanket, and the more blankets you have, the hotter the planet gets under this blanket of gas. And so that's what's happening to our planet right now. And the oceans are directly impacted by this. They have a lot of plant life. Think about plankton. Think about algae that are impacted by these changing temperatures, and they can't produce the same amount of oxygen, and there's just It's this giant feedback loop where the world gets warmer, and when the oceans get warmer, I'm going to talk a little bit about weather. When the oceans get warmer, they create more extreme weather because warm oceans fuel storms. And so not only does it kill off the wildlife, but we have warmer oceans which fuel more storms, which causes more issues for us here on land. You get more extreme flooding, more extreme weather across the board. Think about extreme droughts, extreme wildfires. It's just a big cataclysmic event that's taken place over the last couple hundred years that's driven by human activity through the creation of factories and transportation and just the expansion of the human empire.
And I mean, we are seeing this hotter than normal temperatures here in Texas, all around the nation.
Oh, yeah.
We've been experiencing the wildfire risks, like you mentioned. So it's around us. We're
Right.
seeing it in real time.
Every year is now a hottest year on record
Yeah.
from the year before.
Every year, it's like the hottest day gets earlier and earlier in the year.
Right. What's April right now? When we have February, we had 90-degree days.
Yeah, and
already.
it snowed in February. It was
Right.
so
So you're
like, up
seeing
and
these
down.
extreme swings as a result of the warming temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
One way to think about it is the planet is always trying to reach equilibrium, right? If you have these warm temperature spots, those are always trying to cool themselves down.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have such extreme temperatures in some of these areas along the equator, for instance, as a result of climate change and these warming temperatures, the attempt to cool it down creates more extreme weather. So it's this feedback loop that's occurring, and it's as a result of human activity.
Well, Eric, you spoke with
Yes.
somebody on this story. What did they say?
So I spoke with Jordan Casey. She's an assistant professor at the University of Texas at Austin's Marine Biology group. And what she's looking at is part of this week's Hot Science Cool Talks at UT. It's a lecture series they do every month. She's talking about specifically coral reefs and the impacts that are happening in there and the food webs that are happening in there. So one thing she's studying is food webs and how we determine what eats what. So humans are part of the food web. If you don't know, everything is. Every living thing. Everything's part of the food web. The only thing I think that's not is rocks.
Yeah.
So everything's connected. And she actually studied these food webs. And this is a piece of how she did it from my interview with her.
So when you walk in the supermarket, you'll see every product has a barcode on it. In the same way, DNA is barcode of life. So every organism has unique DNA. So we can look in the inside of different organism stomachs, look at all the DNA that's in there, and then we know what it's eating. So in that way, we can piece together food webs.
So food webs get pieced together through everything that she mentioned. I didn't even know about food webs. This is interesting.
Yeah, everything is connected to the food web. Everything eats something.
Yeah.
Humans are typically at the top, and then if dinosaurs return, it'll be T-Rexes, but and Velociraptors. But currently, humans are at the top, and everything feeds into us. Everything feeds on each other, and then we feed on everything else. We're kind of an all-consuming creature like that. So yeah, she used DNA to trace these food webs in our oceans and determine what eats what and how much is it eating. They look at the stomach and of these, like a fish, cut it open, examine the DNA, and yeah, that's how they figure out the food webs and figure out what's eating what, and specifically in the coral reefs. Now, we can talk more about this. You want to go on a break real quick?
Yeah, we'll come back
All
from
right.
this break and talk a little more about these food webs. We'll be right back. And we're back. We're here talking with KXAN's Eric Henriksen about an Earth Day topic that has to do with the ocean more than the land. And with me to talk about this is Eric Henriksen. Eric, we were just talking about food webs.
Right.
What else did the scientist tell you?
So Jordan Casey with the University of Texas at Austin is doing a Hot Science Cool Talks lecture series. That's going to be Friday night at 7 p.m. at Welch Hall. It's free to the public. You have to kind of get there and sign up. They have some events happening starting around 6 that are great. They're talking about Earth Day and Earth Day events this week. And so she's looking specifically at coral reefs and the food webs and what's happening to coral reefs. And she talked a lot about what specifically they're seeing with coral reefs and coral bleaching, which is when coral die off as a result of warmer oceans and higher temperatures. And let's take a look at what she has to say about coral reefs here.
We've found that food webs have strikingly similar patterns across the globe, and they are extremely vulnerable to losses of different consumer species. So what that means in terms of global change is that when we start losing these species, the whole food web can fall apart really quickly. Every species is unique and has a role to play in a marine ecosystem. So everything matters, and losses are really a big deal for these marine systems.
So when she mentions that these species all play an important role, how many species so far have died out, if you know, or like percentage wise of these coral reefs?
They expect so coral reefs play a major role in this because they are homes and food for many fish. So when you have dying out there, it impacts everything within the food web, right? So as members of the food web ourselves, that directly impacts us. How many have died off? It's a lot. Now they do expect around 90% of coral reefs, up to 90%, this is United Nations, up to 90% of the coral reefs will die off if we do not prevent temperatures from rising. I think it's 1.5 degrees Celsius. I cannot do that math. I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit. And for some reason, I don't have that number. I never remember that number. Yeah, I know it. I've seen it, but I never remember what it was. 1.5 degrees Celsius. If it gets above that, 90% of the coral reefs will likely die off up to 90%. I think the range is 70 to 90. And so it's a pretty big range and a pretty big hit on our food web.
Pretty close to 100%.
Right. And if you think about it, like how many species feed off of coral reefs, how many species feed off of those species. Jordan and I talked about commercial fishing a little bit, and how some of these species then feed off of those species and then we eat those for commercial fishing. So if you remove their food source,
then we won't get our
the
food
thing
source.
that we eat won't have food, right? And then we don't have a food source.
Wow. And have scientists figured out a way that they're going to stop this warming or help these coral reefs?
It's on us. We have to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions we're doing. And that's part of what we're talking about on Earth Day, right?
Yeah.
You need to reduce, recycle, reduce how much you're driving, carpool when you can. I know some people are against electric cars, but they don't have as much emissions. They do have a lot of, upfront emissions, but over time they have less. Do whatever you can. If you can walk, I know we're in Texas. Bike if you can. Anything you can do to reduce. That's one thing you can do. You could also reduce the amount of trash you're putting out in the environment. Recycle whenever you can. I know recycling has some issues, but it's better than nothing. It's these little steps we can do. They're not always successful.
Yeah.
But if everyone does a little bit, we do a lot, right? So that's the hard part. I know in Austin, we do a lot of recycling. I have a giant recycling tub and a tiny trash can. So that's how it is in my house. I have a feeling, and I know they have
Forces you to put your recycling where it belongs.
You can compost if you can. Take all your vegetables, which I don't eat very often, so we don't compost. I do a lot of frozen veggies, which are just as good, by the way. You can do that. You can compost old vegetables, old fruit, and we actually use that in Austin. They use that for fertilizer. They take those materials, they turn it into Dillo dirt, which is used for fertilizer across the whole area. So there's a lot of great things you can do to go green and to help protect the planet. And by taking these actions as a whole, we will improve the planet. Now there is a lot of issues with bigger corporations and countries that are producing a lot of greenhouse gases. You can't control that, but what you can do is these little things.
Yeah.
And that's what Earth Day is all about, doing the little things. Go plant a tree. Trees help remove carbon dioxide from the air. They produce oxygen. So you plant a bunch of trees, they'll reduce the carbon dioxide in the area. We do enough trees. I don't know if it's going to have a huge impact, but it'll have some impact. One of the reasons that carbon dioxide has grown so much is the amount of the Amazon rainforest we've destroyed, which has been one of the greatest carbon dioxide consumers on the planet. But they've done that through logging and creating more wood. They've gone through and wiped out a lot of the Amazon rainforest, and as a result, we're having this issue. So it's all, I can go back to the food web. It's all connected, right? All these little bits are all connected. And on Earth Day, it's all about doing your little part in that little bit of the web to make the planet a little better place.
And learning about all of this is part of Earth Day, understanding what we're doing and how we can fix our mistakes.
Right. Mistakes, I don't even call them mistakes. It's just the product of human growth, right? And part of growing is learning how you can do things better.
Yeah.
That's how we got to the place we are now, but hopefully it paves a path to where we can go. But finding out what our problems are and what we've caused and how we can improve the planet, we can do that, and NASA's doing that. And we can talk about that after the break, right?
Yeah, we can.
Cool.
We'll be right back. And we're back from that quick break to talk about how NASA has their foot in this whole situation with Earth Day and coral reefs. And with me to do that is Mr. Eric Henriksen. Eric, how is NASA incorporated with all this?
So you said foot. I was going to say eye. Had the eye on it. So they're gathering a lot of now. So NASA has a lot of satellites that circle the planet. And one of the cool things NASA is doing is gathering data on our planet. They look at things beyond just typical climate and weather, but specifics. They look at like river valleys and deltas and how the environment changes across the planet. And one of the things they look at is coral reefs. And through NOAA, they actually have a climate map.
They can see that from all the way up there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You can see the Great Barrier Reef outside of Australia from space.
Wow.
And you have the good enough cameras. I was reading about the Landsat 7. So this is one of the satellites. They have the Landsat series, and these satellites are watching our oceans. And when the Landsat 7 had a new camera on it, and they were saying like high pixel, which I thought was really funny. High pixel camera that can look down the Earth and look down these reefs. This is actually here in Austin, by the way. This is a lab. They look at coral reefs. But they have cameras that can see these oceans and see these coral reefs in pretty good detail. And so we can actually map them. Darwin, you know Darwin, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Darwin actually created maps of coral reefs, and those were the best maps we had for like a century, and they're still pretty accurate, honestly.
Wow.
And NASA uses those maps and these satellites to analyze coral reefs around the world. You know, a lot of times they're kind of more in tropical areas around the equator, so you kind of have a general idea where to look, but they're able to watch these and see how they're changing over time and produce coral forecasts and coral casts. They can see how they are now.
Coral
So
casts.
coral cast. But that Coral Watch, I actually have a link to that in our story on KXN.com, so you can actually look at it and see what NOAA and NASA is looking at.
Wow.
They also have a cool program just called Coral, and that program is they take cameras with lasers, attach them to planes, and they fly over these reefs to analyze them in greater detail. So NASA and a lot of other scientists are studying coral reefs in greater detail from space, looking at the bigger impacts, the big picture, and how these things are changing over time. And honestly, like one of the best things you can do is go find like one like National Geographic does these like tours. Go check out a coral reef yourself. Do one of these like environmentally sensitive tours, and they'll walk you through how to do it safely and to observe these things and to see them up close, to see the impacts. And that it honestly touched me seeing them up close. I was like, wow, that's what a reef looks like. That's been bleached. And
That's what it's not supposed to look like.
that's what it's not supposed to look like, and that's how it looks now. And knowing that changes your view of the world. Yeah, it changes your perspective. That's a good way. So NASA's providing us a scientific perspective, and you should get your own perspective too if you can.
Yeah, I bet that would change your mind and start recycling and start
Yeah.
composting
And you
pretty
know,
quickly.
those things they're big asks, honestly. Like it's a big thing, but if you do just a little bit, you can make an impact. You don't have to do everything. Everything's hard.
Yeah.
The universe is big. The Earth's big. The Earth's so big. It's so big. You know,
Huge.
it's so huge. And understand that's part of the process. But if you can do just a little bit, you can make
If
a
we
big
all
change.
do a little bit,
Right.
that's a big
Everyone
change.
does a little bit. I'm gonna talk about John Wick for a second. So they've done like 4 John Wick movies, and they're gonna do a 5th. This is a sidebar, but I have a point. And I was listening to the director of those films talk about the movies, and he says that if everyone puts in 105%, not 110, not 115, if everyone just does 105%, just a little bit extra, then everything looks a lot bigger and better because everybody's playing it just enough where it raises the bar a whole lot. The movie's not 105% better than the last film. It's 150% better because everyone's putting in like a little bit. So that's kind of how we fix the climate, improve the climate. Everyone puts in a little bit, it'll have a big impact.
And Eric, you also spoke with somebody about reef impacts. What did they say to you?
Oh, reef impacts. I looked at United Nations data on it and just looked at theirs. And one of the big things they said was we're losing a lot of marine biodiversity, and obviously 90%, up to 90% of the reefs could die off, and then as a result of temperatures rising. But they have a full report, and we have that linked in our web story on KXN.com about what you can see for reef impacts. So check that out and to see the bigger picture on what they can do. You're gonna pull it up, aren't you? It's right there at the top. Yeah, there's that link right there at the top. I have it for you there, United Nations impact.
And what else is in this story that we didn't get to talk about today?
We have a little more information. The Hot Science Cool Talks lecture, again, that's happening Friday at Welch Hall at UT's campus at 7 p.m. Dr. Jordan Casey, Assistant Professor Jordan Casey, will be speaking there about her studies on food webs and DNA. Also, some good pictures in there. Just check those out. And some more information on some of the satellites that NASA uses.
And this article is on our homepage, kxan.com. Right now, you can just go to the homepage, click on it, and then you can find all of those links that Eric was talking about. Eric, thanks for joining me on this Earth Day special segment. I hope that my bingo card makes it.
I hope it does too. I haven't looked yet. If you submitted it, I'll go in the. We're doing like a
pool
thing. Yeah. You know, all I had to do was that sound and the. And you know what I meant. Yeah.
We all know.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, thanks for joining me. Is there anything that you are working on this week that anyone can keep an eye on?
I'm working on something about removing cedar trees, but more details to come.
Okay.
Keep an eye out. That'll be tomorrow.
We'll see you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.